Let's talk to Campaigns Director to Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain movement, Charlie Downs. Hello, Charlie.
Hello, Kevin. How you doing?
I'm good. Well, first of all, I want to just focus in on this bit first, which sort of took my breath away. Some of these Labour left-wing backbenchers have warned in no uncertain terms the Home Secretary, stop doing what the electorate wants. Don't listen to the electorate. That is a window into the dark psyche of Labour MPs. Never mind the people, it's all about us. Let us signal our virtue. That's more important than what the people want. But I think Shabana has probably got the numbers to get these proposals through Parliament, do you think?
Well, look, if they have any sense, the Labour government will recognise that. I saw some polling recently which suggested that illegal immigration, and specifically the use of asylum hotels in, kind of people's neighbourhoods, people's communities, is the number one most salient, most concerning issue for a huge number, I think the majority of people in this country now. And I think there's a variety of reasons for that. I think the extensive media coverage that the issue has received is part of that. But I also do think that it is simply the lived experience of people watching their communities change, their town centres change, watching these kind of dodgy looking guys from the third world kind of hanging around in your town centres and so on. And so I think if the Labour government has any sense, they will recognise the electoral reality of the fact that if they don't pass reforms like the ones laid out in Mahmood's document, they're going to get crushed by reform at the next election, because reform, of course, are talking a good game on this issue, and so are the Tories, because it is so salient. And whether it does get through, I think, is another matter. It's been interesting to see the Tories come out and say that they will actually support these reforms if the Labour Party can't find the support on their own benches, which I think is actually quite admirable. We at Restore Britain have commended, as you say, Kevin, the direction of travel when it comes to these reforms. But once again, whether they are what they seem, I think, is the ultimate question here, because part of the document that a lot of people are, I think, missing is the fact that it says that it's going to expand so-called safe and legal routes by expanding the sponsorship program, which essentially allows local community groups and charities to sponsor refugees, so-called, to come into the country. And what that could lead to, I think, is actually a huge increase in the number of so-called asylum seekers that are coming to our country. And so this might actually prove to be a disaster. But we don't know that yet. And actually, you know what? I'm going to choose optimism on this occasion. I think that the fact that there is now a consensus from the Labour Party right the way through to Reform, almost the entire political landscape recognises that this is a really, really important and pressing issue that is making life, substantially worse for a lot of people in this country. It's driving up crime, driving up the amount of tax money that we spend on the asylum system, Kevin, and the amount of money that we spend on universal credit for those with the refugee status. Yeah. It's like upwards of 36 million on that latter one just last year.
I'm not entirely sure, though, Charlie, that I trust Shabana Mahmood as the hardline, tough as old boots, alleged crackdown Home Secretary. I'm not entirely sure I trust her. A lot of critics say that if you look at the details of her reforms, there are actually an enshrinement of our asylum system. This stuff about, you won't be considered for citizenship for at least 20 years. Think about that. There's no proposal about stopping the boats coming over at all. Nothing on that level whatsoever. No proposal, and I think this is massive. What we should be doing as a matter of massive urgency is making sure these people that we do let into the country, that we know who the hell they are. We are still letting thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of young men, frankly, of sexually active age, into the country about whom we know nothing. So there's no proposal to do anything about that. That is a problem. The other thing to say here is, of course, underpinning everything, it all sounded good, as I say. Stella Creasy called it performative cruelty. I call it performative headline hunting. Very good headline hunting it was too. However, underpinning all of her hardline proposals, many of which I quite approve of, as I say, the direction of travel certainly seems encouraging, but underpinning it is this old Labour story: we don't want to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. So everything she's saying about you won't be able to bring your family over in 20 years and, you know, then we'll check every 3 years to see if your country is still at war. That, by the way, is that will not work. All of these hardline proposals, if after 3 years we decide that a country's not at war, we're sending you back, they go to the European Court of Human Rights and no doubt get the right to stay. If someone's not allowed to bring their family over, they go to the European Court of Human Rights, and they almost certainly will be allowed to bring their family over. So as long as we look, I always say that membership, you know, leaving the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, won't automatically solve our migrant crisis, but it is the essential starting block. If we don't leave the ECHR, none of these proposals of Shabana Mahmood can actually work in the end. So if we don't leave the ECHR, any proposal you ever make isn't going to work. Do you get my point?
Of course, and by the way, Kevin, I think that we, in a lot of ways, we are simplistic about this issue, because it's not even just the ECHR that is preventing us from deporting people from our country who shouldn't be here in the first place. In our policy paper, Mass Deportations, Legitimacy, Legality and Logistics, in which we lay out the legal obstacles to mass deportations, we go into the UN Refugee Convention, we go into the various other new Labour reforms around asylum, like the Immigration Act 1999, which also place roadblocks to the kinds of policies that we do need to implement if we want to solve this problem. Because as you know, our suggestion on a solution to this problem is quite simply to utterly tear out the pull factors that currently exist in this country and remove all, you know, as many as 2 million illegal migrants who are currently here. And this kind of softly approach, and sure, I mean, there has been a marked increase in the intensity of rhetoric around this issue by the Labour government in the last 48 hours. But look, I mean, this solution that's being laid out by Mahmood, as you say, I don't think it's going to get through. I think it will be blocked by human rights lawyers on the grounds, particularly of Article 8, because something that is quite a heavy feature of this document is it's basically the talk of family removals.
Yeah, but you can't, Charlie, she's ludicrous.